What if the most dangerous weapon ever deployed in the Cold War wasn't a bomb? What if it was money, religion, and a plan so secret that even the men who built it weren't sure they could control it? This is the story of Operation Cyclone, the largest covert operation in CIA history, a program that armed a generation of fighters and accidentally lit a fuse that is still burning today. It is 1979. The world is holding its breath. For 3 decades, 2 superpowers have been locked in a slow-motion standoff, America and the Soviet Union, each one watching the other, waiting for a blink. Proxy wars are fought in jungles and deserts. Ideologies clash in the shadows, and every square mile of the globe is a chess piece in a game with no rules. Then, the Soviets move. On Christmas Eve 1979, the Soviet Red Army invades Afghanistan. Over 100,000 troops, armored divisions, air support, an occupation built to last. In Washington, the reaction is not panic. It is something colder than that. It is calculation. National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski saw something the public didn't. Afghanistan wasn't just a country, it was a corridor, a gateway. If the Soviets pushed south, the oil fields of the Persian Gulf were within reach. The entire Western energy supply, the global economy, everything. Brzezinski wrote a memo to President Carter. The language was clinical, the intent was not. We now have the opportunity to give the Soviet Union its Vietnam. Operation Cyclone was born quietly, as most dangerous things are. It began in 1979 with a budget of just $500,000. By 1987, it had grown to over $600 million per year, annually. And that was only the American contribution. Saudi Arabia matched every dollar, dollar for dollar. A secret bilateral agreement between Riyadh and Washington, 2 nations bound by oil, ideology, and mutual fear of Soviet expansion. Behind the scenes, Egyptian arms dealers moved weapons. Pakistani intelligence, the ISI, became the pipeline. The CIA became the architect. The money moved through shell companies, foreign banks, ghost accounts buried inside intelligence budgets that no congressional committee was meant to find. And when they did find them, they were encouraged to look away. This wasn't just a covert program, it was a covert economy. They called themselves the Mujahideen, holy warriors, defenders of the faith. They were farmers, shepherds, students, tribal fighters whose grandfathers had repelled the British Empire with the same rifles they now cleaned by firelight. They weren't soldiers in any Western sense. They were something older than that, something the Red Army was not prepared for. The CIA funneled in weapons through Pakistan's ISI, the intelligence service that became simultaneously America's most essential partner and least controllable ally. Stinger anti-aircraft missiles arrived in wooden crates, unmarked. RPGs, AK-47s by the hundreds of thousands, sniper equipment, communications gear. The Stinger missile changed everything. Before it, Soviet helicopters owned the Afghan sky. After it, they feared it. Casualty rates among Soviet air units spiked. Supply routes became kill zones. The Red Army, the most powerful land force on Earth, found itself bleeding in the valleys of a country it could not understand. This was guerrilla warfare at its most visceral. Hit and vanish, strike and dissolve back into the mountain. The Mujahideen didn't fight battles, they fought endurance, and they were winning. By 1989, the Soviets were gone, defeated, humiliated. The Red Army withdrew across the same border it had crossed 10 years before, leaving behind 40,000 of its soldiers buried in Afghan soil. Washington celebrated. The Cold War's final chapter was being written, but no one asked what happened to the weapons.
No one asked what happened to the fighters, men who had been told for a decade that violence in service of ideology was not just permitted, it was holy. No one asked what happened when the CIA stopped calling. The infrastructure built to defeat the Soviet Union didn't dissolve when the Soviet Union did. It evolved, it radicalized, fragmented into factions, and in the crucible of that fragmentation, new movements were forged, movements with longer memories and wider ambitions than any Cold War planner had ever intended. The word blowback entered the intelligence lexicon. It means simply when a covert operation produces consequences that turn against its creators. Operation Cyclone may be the defining example in modern history. But here is what the official history omits. The CIA didn't just fund fighters. In many cases, the ISI, not Langley, chose which fighters received the most money. And the ISI had its own agenda. Saudi Arabia wanted influence in Afghanistan. It wanted depth, strategic buffer. And so the most radical factions, the ones with the most extreme ideologies, were often the most generously supplied. Not because Washington wanted that, but because Washington wasn't always paying attention. There were also the foreign volunteers, men who arrived from across the Arab world, from Egypt, from Yemen, from Saudi Arabia, drawn by the promise of jihad against the godless Soviets. The CIA knew they were there. Some intelligence officials would later claim they were considered an asset, motivated, fearless, expendable. One name from that era will surface again and again in declassified documents, congressional testimonies, and intelligence post-mortems. A name attached to a tall Saudi man who passed through the training camps of Peshawar in the early 1980s. The files on exactly what the CIA knew and when remain partially classified to this day. Operation Cyclone achieved its objective. The Soviet Union was bled dry in the mountains of Afghanistan. The Cold War ended. The West declared victory. But victory has a long shadow. The weapons didn't disappear. The ideology didn't cool. The fighters didn't go home. And the billions of dollars that moved through the shadows of this operation didn't just fund a war. They funded a world that would announce itself with devastating clarity on a Tuesday morning in September in the year 2001. We built something in those mountains. We built it carefully, expensively, and deliberately. And then we walked away. The most dangerous operations are not the ones that fail. They are the ones that succeed.